What you're seeing here are two identical Scala 3 projects, but they use different versions of the JVM. Now what if I told you that you could replicate this entire setup and more in just a couple of minutes? Let me show you. Hey, Vlad here from devinsideyou.com. Welcome to another video. If you're new here, you should know that this is mostly a Scala channel. However, I make videos about all kinds of software development related topics, so you might want to look around. Maybe you'll find something that you like. Also, I'm a bit sick, but show must go on. This video is about Nix, and it's the first video about Nix on this channel, and it's more of a demo rather than a tutorial. I'll show you some cool things and teach you how to replicate them as we move along. Now, even though it's not a tutorial, I know myself, so I won't be able to resist explaining a thing or two about Nix. Please don't get discouraged if you get a little bit lost. It will all make sense towards the end of the video, I promise. There will be more videos about Nix in the future, so you might want to subscribe, and also please hit the like button so that more people stumble on this video. Thanks. This video was brought to you by awesome people like yourself who support me on Patreon. Your contributions go right back into this channel. They allow me to pay for a video editor who frees some of my time, which I then again choose to spend with you, whether it's doing live streams or answering your questions on Discord. There's many of you and only one of me, so all it takes is $1. Thank you. All right, now I built a thingy that allows you to set up a Scala dev environment in just a couple of minutes. And if you have seen my video about Coursier, I'll explain the differences towards the end of the video. Since I'm on Windows, I'll create another WSL2 distribution. It's going to be completely empty and we're going to set it all up from scratch. If you have seen my videos about WSL, you know how to create multiple distributions. So this one is a distribution that I usually use to record my videos, and you see that thing that you saw in the b-roll. I'm going to close it because we actually are not going to need it. So we're in Alacrity. Let's list the distributions that I currently have. As you can see, I have 3 of them. This one I usually use for work. This one I use as a workspace to develop my videos. And this one I usually use when I record my videos. This is where we just came from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Windows Store. I'm going to search for Ubuntu 2004, and we're going to install a brand new distribution with nothing installed on it. All right. So let's go Ubuntu 20.04. Come on, it was right there. All right. So the button is going to say open, but it's actually not installed. So I'm just going to click on it. It usually takes just a couple of seconds, even though it says that this may take a few minutes. It shouldn't take a few minutes. There we go. All right. So it's going to be my username, my password, which is totally not 1234. There we go. So now I can close it. I can close the Windows Store. Let's go like this. So here's a new one. Ubuntu -20.04. There we go, like this. And the first thing that I usually do is I just install the updates because you never know what's in there. So it's going to be like this. Say yes to everything, run a full upgrade. And also if you have some garbage laying around, then also do that, my password, which is totally not 1234. And we're going to cut it out from the rest of the video. Cool. Now, obviously, this is a very empty distribution. So if you do something like Java version, it's going to tell us that Java doesn't exist, and it will give us a couple of ways to install it. So let's go and open my thingy. The link is obviously going to be down in the description. So it's github.com/devinsidey/scalaseed, and it's a Nix Flake for getting started with Scala. As we move along, I will explain what a flake is. Now, I've written a README in such a way that you can just follow it and, do all of the instructions. We're going to go through the README real quick, and basically we're going to follow the instructions. So it says that this is an opinionated Nix Flake for getting started with the Scala programming language. It creates a development subshell with the following Scala tools on the path, a bunch of Scala tools. In fact, it can create alternative subshells with these instead, right? So you can switch between Java 17, 11, and 8. First time you use the subshell, these tools will be downloaded and cached. Once you exit the subshell, they will no longer be on your path. The second run is instantaneous, all right? So the first step is to go through the installation. And one important point over here is to select your OS. I have sent this article to many of my colleagues. They were in the Mac OS and they did not click here. They ran one of these, okay? So we're in WSL, so I'm gonna go like this and I'm gonna click. I'm gonna copy this one, not click, all right? Let's go over here. Let's paste this in. So what's important to understand is that this is a single user installation that you should pretty much only use when you're on WSL. A single user installation means that it will put a tiny line in your dot profile. We're actually going to move it into .bashrc, which pretty much puts Nix on the path. Okay, if you're on a proper Linux or if you're on macOS, it will run through a so-called multi-user installation. So a couple of the commands that you will use to run, Nix commands, you will actually need sudo. We're not going to need any of that in this video. Okay. let's go to the documentation over here. The next thing that it says is to enable the Flakes feature, which is currently experimental. In the future, you're not going to need this. In fact, it has been experimental for over a year at this point. Everybody uses it. It's still kind of fine. In fact, many things in the Nix ecosystem are called, unstable or experimental, but they are actually, very stable and very not experimental. Okay, let's go back. It probably finished. One of the things that it tells us is that it modified our dot profile. It actually put this line in there, so it tells us that we either need to run this line ourselves, or we can just log out and log back in, so that we can go over here and now we can say, which Nix, and it is installed. Okay, so I'm going to paste what I just copied, which will pretty much just create this file over here, nix-conf, and it just put this one line in there, right? So we have Flakes enabled now. All we need to do is we need to go over here and we need to copy this line, which basically says Nix develop, which means, download this Flake from here and launch one of its development shells, in particular the default development shell. Okay, so the comment over here says that you don't need to clone this repo. All of this will be done for us. Okay, so as soon as I'm going to press enter, so it downloaded this tiny Nix Flake, this tiny repository. It understood that there is a shell inside of it. It loads this entire shell. It's going to download a bunch of stuff around like 1.5 gigs. And usually we would cut it out, but I have to explain a bunch of stuff to you anyway. So we might as well start now. Okay, I'm actually going to go over here to my browser where I have a PhD thesis open over here. Okay, so what happened was that around 2003, a guy called Elko Dahlstrom created his own package manager. He called it Nix, and a couple of years later, in 2006, he wrote this PhD thesis, which is like 300 pages long, about build tools and package managers. So he took a look at many existing build tools and package managers. He wrote his own. He called it Nix. As he was developing it, he realized that Bash was not an ideal language to describe builds, so he created his own yet again, and unfortunately, he also called it Nix. So Nix is a package manager, but Nix is also a programming language. Also, around that time, another guy called Armijn Hamel, I probably butchered his name, he created an entire operating system based on that package manager, and it is also configurable with this Nix programming language. Everything is declarative. So you have a file that explains which packages to install. Everything is happening declaratively. Everything is described in the Nix programming language. The operating system is called Nix OS, but we're not going to get into it in this video. Now, the entire Nix ecosystem has been flourishing for many years, and at some point they came up with the idea of a Nix Shell. The problem they were trying to solve was actually debugging, right? Imagine writing a build description for some software package, and if something goes wrong with it and you want to debug it, well, what do you need? Well, you need all the other software that this package needs, like, for example, the C compiler, or who knows, the JVM, all kinds of these tools. You need to create a shell which has all of these tools on the path. However, once you're done debugging, you want to be able to leave that shell, and none of these tools should have polluted your operating system. And this is exactly what Nix Shell is. In fact, a Nix Shell is the same thing as building a package in Nix, just without that last part where it actually builds the package. Okay, it just creates a shell, puts a bunch of things on the path. Once you leave the shell, those tools are gone. Now, a Nix shell can be described in the Nix language, of course, and stored in a single .nix file. And one of the interesting aspects about it is that Nix allows you to pin all the packages that the shell puts on your path to a very specific version. And once we, the devs, saw this, we went batshit crazy, because it meant that you could just add a tiny file with a .nix extension to an existing software project, and if evaluated, all the devs on the team will have the exact same versions of the tools that you need, right? Things like Java, things like the build tool SBT, things like the Postgres CLI, and many things like this, okay? Furthermore, the CI could use the same shell, and also you could build Docker images with exactly these tools, with exactly these versions, and these Docker images could be reused by CI, by staging, and production. Now, Nix shells are great, but they have several issues. They're not really portable, they're not really composable. There's quite a bit of a lack of standardization, because a Nix shell is essentially just a bit of a Nix script, and so one shell definition looks very different from another one. The other problem is the fact that on older computers, getting inside of a Nix shell could take 1 or 2 seconds, because one of the big problems that Nix is trying to solve is reproducible builds, and it does this by a concept called hermetic builds. It's comparable to ahead-of-time compilation. Essentially, whenever you install the package, all the things that it needs pinned to exact versions are also installed with it. This means that when you're loading the Nix shell, you're not only putting the tools that you need on the path, but also the tools that they need. So it can be hundreds, it can be thousands. And even just verifying that all of them are cached can take a second or two on older computers. Lo and behold, Nix Flakes were invented and they solved all of these problems. It's a standardized way to describe a thing that knows how to build multiple shells, potentially multiple packages, and a bunch of other things that we don't need to get into. The entire flake is evaluated and put into the Nix store, which means checking if it's there is pretty much instantaneous. And since Nix Flakes are portable, it can be downloaded straight from the internet, which is exactly what just happened while I was talking. So I created a Nix shell, which puts everything you need to develop Scala on the path. Okay, if we scroll down a little bit over here, there's actually a command over here in Nix Flake meta. So let's go over here. As you can see, it's finished downloaded. So if I do this, it shows me a little bit of metadata. And if I do Nix Flake show, it will show me what is inside of this flake. And inside of this flake, we can ignore the formatter. There are 3 development shells. Well, technically 12, because each of them is for a different architecture. I am on Linux over here. By the way, if you haven't noticed, it doesn't work on Windows, but it totally works in WSL, as you can see. So I'm on Linux over here. This is the default shell, which, by the way, is Java 17, and I also created 2 more for Java 11 and Java 8. Okay, so if you look over here, this is how you use them. You just do pound and then Java 17, pound, Java 11, and so on. Okay, so what happened right now is that if I run this tiny command over here, it will show me what the Nix, what it put on the path, and it is all of these tools. Okay, unfortunately, because we're in Bash, we're not in ZSH with some fancy prompt theme like the power level 10K, for example, which I made a video about it. It's kind of hard to see that we're inside of a Nix shell. There is kind of a hacky way. There is a variable called in Nix shell, and it will say that it is impure. Impure means that we don't only have these things on the path, but we also have the things that were globally installed via, apt, for example, or homebrew. Things like VI or whatnot. Things like Git, which Git, it's still on the path. Let me show you a couple of other commands. This one over here, this fancy incantation also shows you where those things are in the Nix store, right? So there's a /nix/store. Inside of it, there's a hash. This is how hermetic builds are done. This is how reproducible builds are done. This is essentially a pinned version. This is the name of the package. The version is actually also just part of the name of the package. So this is not the actual version. This is more of a convention to put the version as part of the name of the package. Now, if you take a look at this incantation, it actually shows only the build inputs. Remember, a Nix shell is a description of how to build a package, but without actually building it. We're just taking its build inputs that would have been used to build a package, and we're creating a shell with all of this stuff in there. However, there are actually more things on the path, and if you copy this one, you will see that stuff as well. Okay, and we can copy one of these to show a different version, right? So if I go Java version, we're going to see that this is now Java 17. If I run this one, and notice that we're creating a subshell inside of another subshell, which is not a big deal. It's like running bash inside of bash inside of bash, right? We just need to not forget to, to get back out of it. We're going to cut it out from the video. All right, so if I run Java version now, we're going to see that we use Java 11. If I press Control D, or if I tap exit, we're going to be back in that other shell, right? So if I go Java version, it's going to be 17. And if we exit that one, so now we're not inside of any shell, and so we don't have any Java version at all. Okay, so let's go back into one of these shells. Let's use the one for, let's use the default one for Java 17, and we can actually go and create a directory. I'm going to call it dev. Okay, and inside of it, we're going to create a Scala project, right? So if we scroll down, so I designed it for, Scala newcomers. So you can run one of these commands. So we're going to run this one to create a Scala 3 project. Okay, so CS is a program called Coursier, which is a Scala package manager these days. Unfortunately, not every package is available in Nix just yet. So we're using a tool called Jitterate, and we're using Coursier to actually put it on the path. Coursier has, it seems like it has a lot of inspiration from Nix. So we just did CS launch, which basically said, okay, create sort of like a subshell with just Jitterate on it, run this one command, and then forget that it ever existed. Okay, so it runs Jitterate, which is a templating tool for Scala. So it asked me a couple of questions like, how do you want to call it? I'm going to call it J17 just because I can. Organization, package, doesn't really matter. And so what it did is it created this folder over here with a finished Scala project in there. So we're going to start SBT, which is a Scala build tool. If you're not familiar, I'm going to cut it out from the video because it's going to take a while. All right, so it used one of my generated templates to create a project. So you see a couple of aliases. I'm going to run with the run alias, which will download everything that the project needs. We'll compile the project. We'll actually run it. It's just a hello world project. And then we can also run the tests. There you go. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open it with Visual Studio Code. Now, I told you that we're going to set up an entire development environment. So this is kind of cheating because the way it works in WSL is that the things that are installed on Windows are on the path. And so what is happening right now, it understands that there is no VS Code inside of WSL. So it actually starts VS Code on Windows. It creates a server on the WSL side. So I'm going to go over here. And the way it works with the packages, with the extensions, is that even though I have a package called Metals installed, which is a Scala language server, it is not installed inside of this WSL instance. So I'm going to install it. I was actually wondering if you could see some output. Yeah, there we go. So notice that at the very top, hold up, it actually noticed that we have GraalVM 17 on the path, which happens to just lay around in Nix store. I'm going to install this later. Let's open some Scala file. Because after it's installed, it should ask me to import the build, correct? And then we're also going to show the logs. Okay, so as you can see at the top of the log, it's kind of hard to see now, but it also noticed that we have GraalVM, which is the only Java version that we have installed. We're going to cut out the rest from the video, even though it should take just a couple of seconds because it's a hello world project, but still, we're going to cut it out from the video. Hold on, turn it on. There we go. Come on, please follow it. All right, so we're seeing some error message, but this happens very often. Let's see if we can ignore it. Just wait a couple of seconds. No, it says that there is no build target. Okay, so let's install another extension. It's actually my favorite extension, which is called Reload, which puts a tiny button over here, which allows me to reload VS Code. All right, software these days. No, later. All right, let's see, metals. There we go. So as you can see, notice GraalVM, blah, 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 connected to the Bloop server. I don't know why this is happening right now. It might be happening because I'm running Bloop in my other distribution. Let's go like this. Maybe we'll need to install the update. All right, so unfortunately, this happens with Bloop very often. Hold up, it said imported build. Maybe something is happening. Okay, something is happening. Compiling. There we go. Indexing. Things are happening. I think it's gonna work now. So yeah, just a couple of restarts and I got it to work. Come on, I should see a lens over here. Downloading some stuff. Downloading Scala fix. There we go. All right, so now we can go to definition. We can go back. We can click on run over here. There we go. While it runs, we can also go into example suite. We can run the tests. Anyway, so this is a finished development environment for Scala. Let me close VS Code and we're back over here. All right, now this is not how you would usually use Nix Flakes. Usually you would have a flake per project, right? Because if I get out of here and now I run, Java version, it's not in there. So what I would want to have is I would want to be over here and I would want to load the Nix Flake over here, right? So Nix develop Scala seed, right? So this is where I would be and that would be Java version and that would actually work, okay? So there's a fancy tool called Direnv or Direnv, and I already made a video about it. So this tool is hooked into your shell, and every time the shell changes a directory, it lets this tool know. And what this tool in turn does is it looks for a file called .envrc, and if it finds one, it runs the commands inside of this file because that's what RC stands for, run commands. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to create a file called .envrc. So inside of it, instead of putting like nix develop, which is what we have been doing so far, we're going to say use flake. Okay, and we're going to put the same thing in there. GitHub, dev inside you, Scala-seed. Okay, and we're going to say, well, inside of it is going to be a shell called Java 17. Please run that one. And in fact, we're also going to pin it to a very specific commit. Okay, so we're going to go over here. We're going to scroll up. We're going to click on commits. Okay, and we're just going to click copy here. This is the latest one. So we're going to go over here, paste it in right here. Okay, so this is the thing that we're putting inside of a file called .envrc. All right, now usually Direnv is a tool that is used to load environment variables when you switch into some directory, but it also has a Nix integration. So what we're going to do is, well, first of all, we need to install Direnv or Direnv, and we're also going to install another tool called nix-Direnv. Now we need to install them globally, right? Everything that the shell installed was local. This one we need to install globally. So you can use apt to install it, you can use homebrew to install it, but we can also use Nix to install it. Now, what I'm going to show you next is usually a little bit frowned upon in the Nix circles, because people inside of the Nix circles, they like to do everything declaratively. So they like to have a file that will list all of the tools that they want to have installed. All of the configuration of the entire system would be in that file, which is optional, but still, okay? We're going to do this some other time. For now, it's fine to just go and install them. So we're going to treat Nix as a regular package manager for a while. We're going to go like this, Nix profile install, okay? And there's a huge repository on GitHub called Nix packages, and inside of it, there's a couple of tools that we need. One is called Direnv, and another one is called nix-Direnv. By the way, this command is only going to work because we did this configuration where we enabled the Nix command and the Flake. So what happened was, in the past, whenever you would install Nix, and in fact, today it's still like this, you actually install a bunch of tiny binary tools. One is called, for example, nix-env, another one is called nix-shell, and they're in the process of uniting it, right? So there's going to be one command called nix, and it's going to have a bunch of subcommands like nix profile install, okay? So we're going to run this real quick, and it's going to globally install Direnv and nix-Direnv, and we're going to cut it out from the video. All right, so now if we run nix profile list, or if we run nix profile history, we're going to see that we have two versions of profiles. We're going to get into this into some other video, but essentially, you don't only just like install things globally, you actually have different versions. And so if something goes wrong, you can go back to this version. It's like a Git versioned way of installing things, okay? And if you want to see the man pages, this is how you do this. This is the man for Nix profile, and this is the man for the install command, for example. Okay, as you can see over here. All right, let's exit. So now we have which Direnv, and then we have which nix-Direnv over here. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to actually hook it into our shell. So I'm going to go over here. I have Direnv already open, direnv.net. Okay, we're going to search for a hook. No, there we go. Docs, hook into your shell. Okay, so we're using bash. I usually use DSH, but this is the line that we need. Okay, so we're going to grab this line, and it says to put it into .bashrc. Okay, so we're going to echo something into, well, very important, two things, because we don't want to override the entire .bashrc. We're going to paste it in over here. Okay, and it's actually not going to work. Well, first of all, we need to reload our bashrc. Okay, so if we go out, we go back in, and we go into dev J17 like this, even though it's installed, even though it's, hooked into our shell, it doesn't work. In fact, I was actually hoping that it would tell us about an error, but I'm not seeing an error. It's because I forgot the tilde. Okay, so we need to remove the bashrc, and we need to do that. Okay, so now if we go out, we go back in, so that says command Direnv not found, but it can be installed with blah, blah, blah. Now, this happened, and I don't know exactly why this happened, but if we open the doc profile with behind, we go to the bottom, this is the line that Nix put in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to save the file, and I'm actually going to go into bashrc. Okay, I'm going to go to the bottom, which is where we put this eval line. I'm going to paste it just above, right? Let's create some space over here, like this. Okay, so now it's going to work. I don't know why it didn't work in profile. Maybe profile is not loaded for some reason. I really don't know. Okay, so we just moved it to bashrc, and then we're evaluating the Direnv hook. So let's get out, get out completely. So now we go back in. We don't see this error message. Okay, so now what's going to happen is if we go into dev J17, it will show us a security mechanism that says, hey, .envrc changed. Do you want to run it? And it's a security mechanism because there could be anything in there. There could be something like remove my entire partition. And so if you accidentally version it, you share it with your colleagues, your colleague puts something nasty in there, this is exactly why this check is there. So if I go Direnv allow, it will actually start loading this flake. Okay, so if I go out and I do Java version, it's not there. If I go back in, it loaded the flake, Java version, it is there. And notice how fast it actually loaded. I'm on a 4-year-old laptop, and because the entire Nix Flake is inside of Nix store, it took only like one hash comparison to know that I already have it cached, and it started it, right? So everything works the same way as it did before. Okay, so if I do spt run, spt takes a couple of seconds to start, but it's actually not too long. Like this whole command is gonna take less than 10 seconds. Okay, so there you go. Everything works. If I leave the directory, I don't have any of that stuff, which means I can have one project with Java 17, another project with Java 11, yet another project without any Java stuff. It's really awesome. Now, the Bloop CLI is actually available inside of Nix packages, but it is not available for all the architecture, so I decided not to include it in the Flake. However, we have Coursier, right? So we can go launch Bloop, and then we're going to run the project called J17. Okay, so it's going to take a couple of seconds to actually download Bloop, but it's actually not too long. So we're actually not going to cut it out because it's going to be just a couple of seconds. So there was some error message. I actually have seen it before as well. I don't know why it's happening, but if we just run it again, it's fine. No error messages. Again, I have no idea why it's happening. Also, we can decide to globally install Bloop like this. It's going to take just a couple of seconds, and it's going to tell us to actually put something in our bash RC, because this is the location where Coursier installs stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to echo some stuff, and we're going to put it again at the end of .bash RC. What are we going to put in there? Well, we're going to put in there that whole thing. And in fact, we can be super cool, and instead of home Vlad, we can actually do $home, same thing. All right, and there we go. So now we get out, come back in, go into dev J17, right? And so now which Bloop, it's going to be on the path, CS list. We only have Bloop installed. So now we can do Bloop run J17, okay? But now Bloop is installed globally. It's not just within the shell. So if we leave this shell, Bloop is still installed, right? Which Bloop, it is still there, right? Because it's not managed by Coursier. It has nothing to do with Nix. Now let me show you something more. So if we go over here, and we're going to use another flake, right? So we're inside of Direnv. Direnv loaded the Nix Flake, and inside of it, we're going to load another flake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Nix Flake show, and this one is not mine. This one is from Gabriel Volpe, who is kind of famous in the Scala ecosystem, and he created a Neovim flake, right? So it's a flake that would put Neovim on your machine, which is fully configured, for Scala and even for Haskell and stuff. So he created like multiple shells inside of it. There's multiple packages, and the one that we're going to use is actually going to be this one, for example, right? Scala. Okay. In fact, I haven't seen this one, so let's actually go with this one. Okay. So notice that this is a package. It's not a shell. Okay. So instead of saying nix develop, so this command over here, right? So before we were saying like nix develop, which launched the default shell. Now we're actually going to say nix run. Okay. And we're going to run, let's go with Tokenite. I think people like Tokenite. So I'm going to paste that, and obviously it's going to download a bunch of stuff, and we're going to cut it out from the video. But when it finishes, it will run Neovim, and we're inside of a Scala folder, and metals and everything is already configured, and we're going to play around with it a little bit. And there we go. Neovim with Tokenite. I don't know all the key bindings on this one. I got kind of lucky. Okay, so now metals should wake up because it should realize that we're in there we go. We're inside of the Scala project. So my Neovim key binding is to press Ctrl S, and then it would save the file. So I accidentally pressed it. I should not have done that. Let's see how I can go back. There you go. Okay, it was Alt. Okay. So yeah, I don't know the key binding to go to the definition. So what we're going to do is we're going to go like this, and we're going to see some auto completion. There we go. Let's make a mistake. So let's save it like this. So we should see some errors. And as you can see, like a full-blown IDE without any setup. Okay, let's try it again, and let's exit. There we go. Also, remember how we opened bash RC before with BI? Well, now we're going to open it with Neovim just because we can. Okay, all we need to do is to add the file like this, and ta-da, we open bash RC, right? So this is the stuff that we just added. This is the stuff that puts Nix on the path. This is the stuff that hooks Direnv into bash, and this is the stuff from Coursier. All right, now I know that some of you are concerned about all of that stuff, like where is all of it? how big all of that is. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Nix search, Nix packages, and we're going to search for a package called ncdu, which is a tool that can show you which of your directories take the most space. Now, every time you do this, it actually clones the Nix packages repository, it unpacks it, and then it starts searching, which is why it takes some time, right? But it basically already finished, right? So it found that tool. And so what we're going to do now is, instead of installing this tool globally like we did with Direnv or Nix Direnv, we're actually going to create an on-the-fly shell by running this command, ncdu, okay? It's a tiny tool, so it downloaded pretty quickly. So now we're inside of that shell, which ncdu. We get out, we don't have ncdu. And in fact, we can run it like this, sort of like with the Docker run. We're going to say, well, launch the shell and run this command, okay? And we're going to give it the Nix store because we're interested to see how big our Nix store is. And it's around 5 gigabytes, right? So, our Scala flake, our Neovim flake, okay? The biggest files are, Java 17, Java 11, JDK. So we're going to get out of it, okay? And we're going to do nix-collect-garbage like this. And it's going to delete a bunch of stuff. Actually, don't know exactly which ones it's going to delete because a lot of them are actually going to stay. So as you can see, it deleted like pretty much like the half. Also, if you go like Nix profile history, we're going to see that we have like, two versions, right? But we can also do nix-collect-garbage. And we're going to do -d, which I believe it stands for like generations. And it will actually remove some of this history. Okay, so now we have only like the final version, so we cannot go back, we cannot roll back, but it actually hasn't deleted anything else. And by the way, if you wanted to upgrade the tools that you have, you would run upgrade, and via a regex, you would pretty much say, just upgrade all the packages. Okay, there shouldn't be any new versions. Yeah, and it should finish in just a second. And by the way, we're still inside of Direnv. So if we go into dev J17, now it will actually start downloading a little bit because some of the things were just deleted, right? It's actually not going to be like as much as before. And this is a warning from Direnv. It says, hey, it's taking a while. Like, are you sure you want to wait? So as you can see, it didn't actually remove everything. And one day we're going to figure out how to remove, actually everything. I don't think it's a good idea to just go and like delete the Nix store. But, maybe it works. I probably should mention at this point that I myself am not a Nix expert. I teach the thing that I do know. Okay. All right. Now, in the beginning of the video, I promised to mention the differences between Nix and Coursier. So here it comes. First of all, Coursier, at least by default, puts everything on the global path, right? So if we get out of the shell, if we do like CS list, we see that, well, actually, this way we actually don't even have Coursier, okay? So CS list, like it put Bloop on the global path. Now it also has things like launch, right? We did this stuff before, right? We did like Bloop, and then we did run J17. Okay, so when it ran the project, so we didn't need to have like Bloop installed globally. We can do like, this is sort of like similar to a Nix Shell, right? So we're programmers, we can always find a way to to work around things like putting things globally on the path, but still it's not as convenient as with Nix. Another thing is that Coursier is primarily for Scala or maybe some JVM tools, and Nix is very, very general. And a third thing is that, at least for now, which is something good, something that goes for Coursier, which is the fact that not everything is published to Nix yet, not everything Scala related. Also, it doesn't get updated as quickly as it could be, but it's going to get better with time. Even in our small Scala community, we already have enough people that are very interested in Nix. Now, Nix is super cool, and I'm definitely going to check it out more. I'm going to make more videos about it, and also we might learn it together here live on YouTube, so you might want to subscribe, hit the bell and whatnot. All right, now take these flakes for a spin, and if you want to learn how to write your own flakes, you might want to check out a blog article by my buddy Jacob, who also has a YouTube channel over here. All the links are going to be down in the description. Also, I recently started a following really cool stream called the Alt F4 stream. It's a DevOps stream, but they also do a lot of Nix stuff in there, so you might want to check it out. Again, all the links are going to be down in the description. I hope you enjoyed this one. Check out the previous one, and I'll see you in the next one. For now, as always, it's been Vlad from devinside.com. Don't forget to like this video if you did, subscribe if you want to improve the developer inside you, and if you wish to contribute to tech education, please consider doing so on Patreon, and watch my videos before everyone else. And most importantly, take care.